Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and today I'll be ranking classes on BFA that are caster DPS classes, and I'll be ranking them mostly in the PvP aspect. With a brand new server dropping on the beta, we get access to Gladiator Sanctum. That means we get access to 120 characters, all types of gear, all kinds of stats, all kinds of Azeroth bonuses, so we can really customize characters and jump into PvP, whether it is arenas or battlegrounds. And in today's video, if you guys are excited to play some casters, be it Warlocks, Mages, Shadow Priests, or are simply wondering how all these casters are looking like in PvP, maybe a bit PvE, then this video will at least give you guys a little bit of my idea and my first impression of their state at level 120. Now, I should mention this is beta, so a lot of things are getting changed left and right. For example, just yesterday, marksman hunters weren't doing all that hot, but I log in today and all of a sudden they got damage and they feel really good to play. So it's a very little tweaks that Blizzard is doing, also fixing some battlegrounds so they can actually be functional, which allows us to actually play the game, play out the objectives, and experience how class is supposed to be played. Also, this video is not the type of video where I'm trying to encourage you to play certain classes or discourage you. This is simply me reporting on my very first impressions of how these classes are doing in the beta. Lots of things are changing, so if you're somebody who's wondering or playing about, let's say, maybe a new main or a new alt, this video goes over how these classes are doing right now in terms of utility, how they feel, damage-wise currently, but all these things are probably going to change. Just to give you guys an insight, what's it like on the beta in case you're not playing. Or if you are playing and you want to test out some of these classes, here are some of the classes that you might be excited about, whether they're strong or whether they are weak. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on to the video. Shadow Priest is the first class I want to take a look at, and before we go on, Blizzard said themselves that in 8.1, patch 8.1, they're going to be doing reworks in Shadow Priest. So I feel like for a lot of you guys that want to play Shadow Priest, if you are somebody who never played Shadow Priest before or it's never been your main, maybe some red flags might go up. This means that the spec might come out kind of unfinished, and it will be finished once patch 8.1 is there. So if you're somebody who just loves the playstyle and loves the aspect of what a Shadow Priest is about, then I feel like you won't really be bothered by it. But if you're somebody who's looking for a wholesome experience that feels really good, or as good as it did in Legion with the red flag of 8.1 changes already on the way, I would be a little bit concerned, and this class might be a turnoff for some of you off the bat, that it might feel unfinished. Let's first start with what's good about a Shadow Priest. Your CC is impeccable, and all your CC doesn't have any resources, it's just on a between 30 seconds to 45 second cooldown. First you have your silence, which has been staple. You get your AoE fear back, so no more mind bomb shenanigans for stuns, but if you are missing stuns, Psychic Horror makes a comeback for BFA as a 30-year range ability with a stun effect rather than a horror/disarm effect. Psychic Horror not having any resources makes Shadow Priest a pretty deadly caster out there with the most amount of CC in the game on demand. So if you want to take a character completely out of the game with a fear into a silence, into a stun, and if there are a caster and or a healer, you can really just ruin someone's day with that. And I think that's really going to be good for Shadow Priest. I think it's going to be extremely strong in battlegrounds like RBGs if you want to lock down one healer, and extremely strong in arenas. What isn't strong about Shadow Priest are your dots, and I'll be honest with you guys, your damage over time abilities hit like wet noodle. Your Shadowboard Pain doesn't even hit for 1,000 sometimes, and that's what I've seen from my details when I'm looking at the damage spread. Shadowboard Pain, being such a staple of abilities, doesn't even hit for 1,000, and that is a really weak dot when it can't even hit for 1,000. It can crit for 900. That's a crit, so its average damage over time is even lower than that, which disappoints me to no extent. Also, Vampiric Touch doesn't hit that much damage either, even though Vampiric Touch has a cool effect where as it deals damage, it gives you back health, and with the artifact weapon, it gives you like an absorb if you're fully healed. So that heal is so minor and spreading it to multiple targets. I mean, it takes so many of Vampiric Touches just to get a decent heal out of it, so it just doesn't feel worth. So that feels really bad about Shadow Priest. It's really jarring of an experience when your dots don't really do that much. And I played Warlords, Jenner, and Legion, so those are two expansions where dots were doing majority of my damage. So those dots not doing that much damage anymore just utterly saddens me and feels so clunky playing Shadow Priest. On the flip side, all abilities that are not dots, like Mind Blast and Mind Blast procs, Void Eruption, Void Bolt, your Execute, which is now a talent, so that kind of sucks, and also your Mind Flay, all deal a fair amounts of damage. So you're going to be using a lot of single target abilities to really take down a lot of enemies. Your dots are really there just to get the procs for your Mind Blast if you're going for Shadowy Insight, and your Vampiric Touch is going to be there just in case the healer decides to dispel your dots. They'll be hit with a fear or with a horror effect. So maybe you'll run with a class like an Affliction Warlock in 3v3 arenas. Like, they'll be doing the meaningful dots, but you'll be throwing Vampiric Touch in there just in case the healer decides to dispel all those strong dots. They'll be thrown to CC, and then from there you can begin your CC chain right afterwards. What isn't good about Shadow Priest though is your Void Form. It just does not work that well. Legion designed Shadow Priest to go into Void Form and stay in there as long as possible, with your Artifact Weapon as a catalyst to keep you in there, your Dispersion as a way to stop you from losing Insanity while you're in Void Form to see if you can prolong it, with a plethora of talents to help you stay in there for as long as possible. That Void Form allowed your dots, which are not hitting for that much, to do more damage, and the way the Blizzard is changing out Shadow Priest is so you're not supposed to stay in Void Form, but rather you'll put into it, get into it for a little bit, then dip out. You're supposed to get out of Void Form. So that whole playstyle where you're supposed to stay, where most of your effectiveness comes from Void Form, and no base ways to stay in Void Form for as long as possible, it just kind of plays counterintuitive against one another. So which is why I think a lot of people are finding Shadow Priest to be maybe one of the specs that's just not gonna be coming out as fully fleshed out and finished, which I'm hoping that Shadow Priest will be better once 8.1 drops. Although I still feel like the spec is going to be strong because of its CC capability, especially in arenas, and I feel like its execute damage, even though that's a talent now, Shadow Ward Death, is very, very strong, but it sucks that it's a talent. Feels like it should be part of the playstyle. I feel like Shadow Priest is still going to find plenty of spaces in BGs and in arenas, although I think off the bat, they're not really looking like a spec for me. Then we got mages, and I even have a story to tell you guys of what I expected mages to be when I made one and what they ended up being for me in Legion. I ended up making my mage after watching so many of montages by great mages on YouTube with all the different montages, even those on WoW movies. And I thought, wow, I'm just going to go in there, throw down my fire blast abilities, I'm going to throw down my frozen orb and just do so many crits, so many procs, and I started playing mage in Legion. And it felt kind of slow, it felt kind of rampy. I found Fire Mage with its mastery for PvP, like, you have to get so many Pyroblasts in there, and I'm just tossing that back to forth, and Pyroblast, just to get the mastery ramped up, just so I can do damage, and it felt like it took forever. Frost in particular was a spec I actually found enjoyable, but in PvP, yikes, unless I wanted to play like a pseudo Chaos Bolt with Glacial Spike for a lot of damage, it just didn't find it all that satisfying. Like, yeah, you have some abilities for burst, but it just feels like there's so much ramp up past that with so many frost bolts. Arcane Mage felt pretty good in terms of, I guess, the on-demand damage, but even that just didn't feel, I mean, it felt like it took a while to get the charges up and barrage and charges and barrage, and just didn't feel quite as good. When it came to Mage and BFA, oh my god, does it feel so good, and I'm so happy and so excited, and just, I'm confused, how did Mage become so good all of a sudden? I really fell in love with Fire Mage, and that's all I needed is Fire Mage. I've seen Frost and Arcane perform well. So mages all of a sudden are doing a lot of damage. Like, the proc abilities are doing a lot more for the spec, and I guess it comes for the prune. You don't have as many abilities that you really get to stack in. Like for Fire Mage, not as many abilities for a master to really just stack in. For Frost, not as many like procs to just shoot back and forth. And the specs didn't really change that much in terms of the talents. A lot of your artifact abilities and legendaries just got absorbed into a talent robe. But I feel like mages has always been a class that embodied glass cannon. So you're still squishy, you're still a clothy. So if you don't have a healer, ice block, trinket, or temporal to get out of bad situations or any crowd control, you're gonna die. But just simple procs of, you know, getting hot hands and hot streaks as Fire Mage and going to combustion on top of that, just getting simple procs for damage actually dealt a good chunk of damage of enemy's health. And I'm not sure if that's just a buff for mages overall or if that's just a thing for PvP only. But mages feel really, really good. The damage, just once you get the procs going, bam, 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 it feels really good to play. On top of it, when I'm popping cooldowns, it actually feels like I'm actually popping real cooldowns. So when as a mage in Legion, if popping combustion, I don't feel confident at all that I can kill somebody. I feel that I might be able to do some damage if I get lucky, but I don't feel confident, like zero amount of confidence in my damage. In BFA, however, I polymorph an enemy, I pop burst, I get a few procs, and oh my god, enemies are literally melting right in front of me, and that feels so satisfying. Past that, I can't really say much about mages. Since this class didn't really change, I don't have like a positive to counter with a negative, there's still a very glass cannon character. They have Polymorph, they have Kick on a fairly long cooldown, Dragon's Breath if you're a Fire Mage. Some of those weird talents got added as from like, your artifact weapon procs and artifact weapon, I guess, utilities back into your talent board, so you might like them, might not. But overall, Arcane Mage, Fire Mage, and Frost Mage, all when it comes to the base damage and base playstyle without having burst, they all deal really good damage, so it doesn't feel like I'm just a polymorph bot the most majority of the BG, and then doing damage only whenever I have cooldowns, and even then, sometimes I feel like I'm just not really doing much because it's just too much of a ramp. I feel like it's ironic though, as mages feel a lot faster in BFA, even though this is the expansion with the whole GCD change. Overall, I actually found mages very surprisingly great. I feel like they still have the same disadvantages of, you know, squishy, glass cannon, but the damage on top of it, outside of your burst and during your burst, is a lot stronger, a lot more fun, and that whole glass cannon thing really does come to shine in BFA. I think mages definitely made a good mark on me. It could be the aspect of BFA where they're simply overtuned and they're doing too much damage, but the way that they play right now, I absolutely enjoyed Fire, and if mages stay more or less with as they are right now into BFA, I think I'll continue playing mages into BFA. Next up, we got Warlocks, and there's two specs that I really was interested and concerned about. One of them, Demonology and Destruction. How is Demonology, as this is the new spec with brand new playstyle, is the wild card? How is it? Well, let's talk about Demonology. It has great burst, first of all. If you get your pets up and running, if you get your combos going, you summon your demon commander to buff all your other pets, it has really strong burst. Like, the pets really do majority of the damage. And as long as enemies are not running away from you, as long as they're just getting hammered by the pets, I mean, it's so much damage, it's actually unbelievable. And I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. You have definitely damage on that regard. That is, as long as enemies don't run away from you. I found Demonology Warlocks having to cast Shadow Bolt a lot, as you need your soul shards a lot. There's not a lot of ways for you to generate soul shards. In Legion, you had a few abilities that were kind of like insta-cast, but may or may not have generated soul shards, and it was like this AoE that radiated from your pets. In BFA, however, you have to cast Shadow Bolt over and over and over, and this spell on its own, and I ran a mastery crit heavy build, hoping that my pets and crits and all that would do majority of damage, but I think haste might be the best stat for you, because my Shadow Bolt is about a 2-second cooldown. I mean, it's 2-second cast, so every 2 seconds I'm having to cast Shadow Bolt. 2 seconds, 2 seconds. There's so much of my life just going by, and it just takes so long. If mages and all these other enemies that are quicker than me just start running away from me and my pets, my imps have to cast. They have to stop casting, start running over to the enemy. My demon dogs have to start running to the enemy. My warlock pet has to start running to the enemy, and so do I, and I don't have any time to generate soul shards, so I can't really get my damage going, which is very, very rampy. I did find one thing that's pretty cool about demon warlocks, which I think is something I never really got to try. But a lot of your damage comes from your Demon Bolt, which I guess is a good thing and a bad thing. I was hoping your pets would do majority of your damage, like your Felguard will do literally like at least 30-40% of your damage, right? Just him smacking on the enemy. But no, it's actually your Demon Bolt. So I feel that a playstyle for Warlocks might be where you will send imps, you'll send dogs, and you will use Implosion in order to send your imps at the enemy. As your pets expire, whether they die or whether they time out, you get a Demon Bolt. And Demon Bolt does a good chunk of damage, gets you a lot of soul shards, insta-cast. So I feel like that might be a playstyle for how Demonology Warlocks might end up be playing for PvP. But I'm still not sure because I never really get to test this playstyle fully. I'm not really a caster main. A lot of the times I'm trying to get my soul shards, trying to get the damage, trying to get the pet set. I'm just getting locked at every single cast. I don't know how to Shadow Bolt casting all day. I don't know how to really do jukes or anything. I'm not used to it, you know. It's something very, very new. I feel like the spec is definitely going to be pretty gear dependent. I think it overall was very, very fun, but very, very heavy on cast. I feel like I'm just having to cast every single spell, and once I get those casts, the Shadow Bolts don't even do that much damage. They're just kind of part of a ramp up to get your demons out, and then you have to cast to get your demons out, and then you have to get a wave of demons, and then another wave of demons, then you have to summon the demon guard. It felt it was like so much ramp, I just didn't really expect it, and that felt that was really weird. Definitely something to get used to. But in this video, we got you a double feature because we were talking about Destra Warlocks as well. And I made a video talking a bit about Destra Warlocks, well, really just showcasing the gameplay in the background. Destra Warlocks feel pretty good. They feel a little bit squishier than in Legion. I feel like in Legion they're a complete tank. Like you plant your feet and you get your casts off and nothing can really stop you. For some reason they feel a little bit squishier. in BFA. I think is the change to their artifact weapon. As an artifact weapon allowed you to use wall every minute. Now you can only use it every 3 minutes, so I guess you're on the same par as all the other Warlock specs without any like self-healing capabilities or a drain soul mechanic, so a lot of them are going to feel a little bit more squishy as a caster, which I think is fine. But your Chaos Bolts do majority of your damage, and I love it. I thought maybe Immolates will do majority of my damage as it's a dot. I thought maybe Incinerates and the fact that I can spread them to a bunch of enemies would do majority of my damage. But them Chaos Bolts flying, once they go flying at the enemy, it feels so good. You can just watch Death Knight as he's just wrecking on you thinking, oh, I'm gonna stun you, I'm gonna grip you, I'm gonna kick you, and you just obliterate him, send him into another dimension with a Chaos Bolt. I feel like Destruction Warlocks, as long as Chaos Bolt is the hardest hitting ability in the game, and as long as it hits for as much as it does right now, as long as that ability hits hard, I'm always going to be happy with Destruction Warlocks. But Warlocks are a lot like Mages, they don't really change. Whatever they had prior in terms of like advantages and disadvantages, they don't really change on that aspect at all. Although I did like about Destruction Warlocks that all abilities deal damage, even if you're just going for Incinerates. So every single ability, even though Incinerates without Conflagration do take literally 2 seconds to cast. It feels like 2 minutes. Even if you're taking time to cast all those abilities, again, very, very caster heavy. At least for Destruction compared to Demo, all those base casts just to build up your charges actually do good damage. And while on top of that, you're still doing damage while just building resources, your enemies are thinking, oh my god, I'm getting pelted by this Warlock, I'm taking damage. You're like, oh, you haven't seen my Chaos Bolt just yet. And then you let a Chaos Bolt rip, and that's where the real damage comes from. So you deal damage whether you're building resources, or you're dealing damage whether you're spending resources. That feels really, really good. Absolutely amazing about the Destruction Warlock. Then we get Elemental Shamans, and Elemental Shamans is just like a Shadow Priest. 8.1 is going to be a patch where they'll take a look at a Shaman yet again. That should be some red flags for you guys if you are not sure about playing a class that might feel like it's not finished. But let's talk about Elemental Shamans. Are they any good or are they not? My first impression, and I will be honest with you guys, when I made a video on me playing Elemental Shaman, it felt very underwhelming at first. I had a little bit of time, spent a little bit extra, got a bit of better stats. I'm very haste heavy, so I can get my lightning bolts out, since I feel like I end up casting those a lot. I'm very mastery heavy, as you know, if I'm getting procs, I'm getting more resources. I can use my earth shocks a lot more often, so that feels pretty good. I also got my Azeroth bonus changed to what other shamans are using, like shaman mains. So I'm copying their builds, I'm copying their talents, I'm copying their Azeroth bonuses. As I understand, some classes in BFA are going to be very heavy on gear. And still, I just cannot quite grasp the shaman. So let's take a look at what's it good at and what's it not. Shamans are really good in terms of sustained damage. I feel like their damage overall, in terms of, you know, dealing solid damage, whether it's AoE or single target, as long as they can keep casting lightning bolts, which sometimes is impossible in PvP as you know you get kicked. As long as you can get your lava bursts out there, as long as you can get your flame shocks, you can deal good sustained damage to a single target or in an AoE of targets. So I feel that the playstyle change for shamans, it's a little bit more rigid, but you have a little bit better of a guaranteed sustained damage. The rigidity for the playstyle is pretty numerous though, and these things might offset you, but Flame Shock, for example, has a cooldown. So that's not a big thing. It's a 6-second cooldown, but you used to just run in as a Elemental Shaman and Flame Shock the pets, the NPCs, the players, the guardians that they would summon, like elementals, for example. You would Flame Shock the world, and they would have lava bursts just flying everywhere. Right now, as an Elemental Shaman, I'm spending a lot of time hard casting lava bursts and, you know, going off of procs whenever I have, but I definitely cannot rapid fire lava bursts like I could, and I've always found that fun about Elemental Shaman. What's still good about Elemental Shaman is if you challenge yourself properly, you have access to fire abilities, nature abilities, and frost abilities, making you basically nigh impossible to get locked out by any of the melee. You got a Death Knight and a Warrior training you down, just kicking every single cast you have. You can't heal yourself with nature, you can't cast any fireballs at them. How about some ice? If you go for an Ice Fury Talon build, you can just cast Frost Bolts, or I guess Frost Shocks at the enemy back to back to back. So that feels really, really good about the spec. That feels very, very nice because you can never feel like you're getting locked out of any school of spell if you do challenge yourself properly. But let's talk about those abilities, about those different schools of cast. You have a lot of abilities that allow you to get one cast off and then you get a bunch of instant casts back to back to back as a shaman. You had your artifact weapon for 3 lightning bolts or chain lightnings, made them stronger and give you more resources. Your Ice Fury, which has been a staple of Shaman Burst, gives you Frost Shocks more damage, but Frost Shocks do more damage as they consume Maelstrom, so you have to load up some Maelstrom. Maelstrom consumption for Frost Shocks is gone. If you want some steady damage for Frost Shocks from Ice Fury, you can't. You no longer have a playstyle where you can just gain a little bit more Maelstrom though and do more damage. So that feels a little bit underwhelming. I kind of like the playstyle of like, okay, let me save up some Maelstrom, then I'll Ice Fury, then I'll Frost Shock and spend that Maelstrom and do more damage. It felt more skill based. Your artifact weapon ability gave you that oomph of damage while you didn't have good sustained damage. I don't think Shaman hasn't had good sustained damage in a long while. You had very bursty, very random damage, and using your artifact weapon for that bursty random damage felt really good in Legion, for example. That ability is basically gone. It's really used not for damage increase, but rather just for extra resources so you can get your Earth Shocks. Another thing is your resources to spend Maelstrom are a lot smaller. You don't use your Flame Shocks to extend them. You don't use your Frost Shocks in order to make them a little bit stronger and last a little longer. You also, the only thing you can really use them on is Earthquakes and Earth Shocks. And those deal okay damage, but they just don't really have as much of a punch as they do in Legion. I feel that generally elemental shamans are changed more in terms of PvE, and I feel like it just has an effect for PvP as well. I feel the whole playstyle of the spec changed to be more consistent, less RNG, more predictable, less random. But that randomness getting completely taken out with random capabilities, I think kind of made it a little bit less fun for PvP. Another thing that really took out, and I really don't like this one, is Gust of Wind. I felt like it was such a cool ability for shamans, made you so much more mobile with all your insta-cast abilities on top of that. You could move around, leap around, just cast so many abilities back to back to back, and that felt really good about Shaman. But right now you kind of just feel like you have to run around, no Gust of Wind, plant your feet, cast spells, and it feels a little bit rigid and feels a little rough. I feel like for PvE, I feel like LA Shamans might feel really good. For PvP though, I don't think that for me. I have been told that I'm playing the spec different. I'm playing the spec not the right way, and I have no idea what I can do differently. I copied my build from all the other shamans on the beta servers that are playing as shaman mains. I copied him even to literally Azeroth bonuses, which most people don't have to do, and I haven't had to do that for other classes at all so far. I copied them to exactly the same talent build. I'm trying to run them as best of talents as everybody else is, but something about the spec I guess I just cannot grasp. So again, it could be just me not playing it properly, but I just didn't quite find shamans up to my fancy, at least at the time of making this video. And then we got the Boom Chicken. Winner, chicken dinner. Boomies felt really good. I don't know what it is about classes that got the least amount of changes. Mages and Boomies got the least amount of changes out of all these classes in the game. Warlocks also being, more or less not changed except for demo. But Boomies didn't change at all. They actually just gave them more talents that you can run with in terms of more flexibility, more talents just to give you resources, and the spec just feels so great. I honestly didn't expect to enjoy it. What's great about Boomies is they have instacast heavy playstyle. You run into the enemies, what do? You just start dotting them up. Moonfires, Sunfires on everybody. You're generating resources. When you want to go burst, whether it's AoE or single target, you have a lot more flexibility on talents. BFA added a lot more talents for you to play around to give you resources like very fast amount of star power or astral power, but I might end up calling it star power throughout the video just because there's moons and stars and lunar fire, solar fire, you understand. But you just can get your damage up very quickly without having to stand and cast spells. So it's instant cast, back to back, go, boom, and you got a lot of your damage rolling already. Even when it comes to standing still and casting, Boomies already have a natural way of getting themselves a fast cast playstyle because of their mastery. When you're spending abilities on your Star Surges, or when you're casting Lunar Strike or Solar Wrath, those abilities can empower each other. So when those abilities are empowered, whether through a Star Surge or by empowering one another, they get a faster cast and do a little bit more damage. So you have abilities that are castable that already have a fast cast. So going into haste heavy gear is not as necessary. You have dots that deal a fair amounts of damage. You have abilities, whether it's dots or whether it's other abilities to build up resources that allow you to build up resources very quickly, almost on demand whenever you want to, with fairly short cooldowns. which allows you to either choose for AoE playstyle with burst and starfalls and dots on everybody, or if you want to focus one target, insta-cast star surges, and then fast cast abilities to finish off the enemy. It just feels and forms so well together. Boomies didn't really change that much besides more talents that they gotten in BFA. So you still have the same, I guess, advantages and disadvantages. Spare playstyle, check, that's good. Pretty bursty single target, actually kind of sort of there. They actually have a few more self-sustainable playstyles, as there's, you know, a lot more variety in terms of honor talents they can pick. So for duels, they actually are not that terrible. And when it comes to battlegrounds, there's so many ways for them to approach more than one situation. And like, they feel actually pretty tanky. They are still a caster, you know, they can still get kicked, but having access to nature and arcane spells, you can literally cast nature into enemy's face and then go into arcane all of a sudden, and you can kind of just flip-flop between one and the other in terms of damage. You get interrupted on nature, you got lunar. You get interrupted on arcane, you got nature. So, you know, there's really hard to pin you down as a boomkin. Plus, that's only the time when you do need to cast. Even if enemies can get those fast casts interrupted, the rest of the time you're just running around instant casting abilities, can't even get interrupted in the first place. I guess boomies are more or less what they have been in Legion. I guess they're pretty squishy if you focus them down, and that's what a lot of people have been saying. If you don't get the procs and you don't really get the damage, you can get focused down fairly quickly if you don't have a healer. But there are some situations where you can get some solid self-healing for yourself, as Blizzard has added them a little bit extra oomph. I've been seeing a lot more people outside dueling as boomies, as they are actually pretty doable and self-sustaining, which is actually really cool about the spec, which is something we haven't really seen that much in Legion. Boomies didn't really change that much, but I feel like just they felt so good to play. The damage was just right. The playstyle was just there. The instant cast capability made it so PvP friendly, and having access to nature as well as arcane spells makes it really hard for you to get pinned down and kicked. So you hard casting spells into enemy's face with somebody who doesn't really know that well how to juke properly for PvP made it that much better and that much easier for me to get into the spec and even try it out for a video. I actually enjoyed boomies a lot, and surprising so, because they have been in kind of a weird spot sometimes here and there in Legion, but in BFA they feel so great to play as a caster. Wow, that was a pretty long video. There's a lot of classes for me to get through, but a lot of these DPS classes, those intellect casters, they're great for the most part. I really like the changes that Blizzard has done to them. I think some of them need a little bit more improving, maybe a little bit more fine-tuning, but I think overall on class changes front, in terms of just the changes to playstyles, for the most part, I'm pretty happy. Alright, it's time to rank them, and again, this is just beta stuff, this is first impression stuff, all these numbers might change. Some classes are probably overtuned, some are undertuned, and on top of it, this is just my opinion, so it shouldn't matter that much. You're more than welcome to voice your opinions and comments, but this is how I would rank these classes. I want to rank Mage in the upper tier. Mage surprised me just on fire alone, and I've seen Frost and Arcane perform well in BGs, so I actually am excited to play some Mage in my free time. I love the fact that, you know, just going through basic procs, just playing the class of, you know, trying to get those hot streaks and throwing Pyroblast. I don't feel like I have to literally fire off a million Pyroblasts just to start seeing enemy's health start dropping. I have to do a few, you know, just a couple different procs here and there, get a few lucky crits, and the damage really does come. I like the glass kind of playstyle. Like, you deal so much damage, but you can be squishy. You can just be squished in a moment. So I feel that just feels so good, rather than, you know, having this very rampy playstyle, but also very squishy. I would also put Boomkins at the very top as well in the upper tier. Surprise, surprise. But I actually did find Boomkins surprising. What I don't understand is classes that barely got any changes for BFA are actually probably playing some of the best casters for me. I like boomies as somebody who's a non-caster. Like, you're having access to nature abilities and arcane abilities, so getting kicks and learning how to juke cast is just not as, I guess, necessary. I also very much like the instant cast heavy playstyle and a variety of different talents that you can pick now in order to craft yourself the build that you want. And there's also a lot more talents that I haven't gotten to check out in this video, so that'll be something I'll be doing as BFA goes on. I found these guys surprisingly fun and absolutely awesome to play. Even though they lost their artifact weapon, I feel like they play just fine without it. I would say in the mid tier, I would put Warlocks there. Mostly because I was really excited for Demo and Destro, and Demo ended up being not as good as I thought it would be. I think the spec needs some work, and maybe somebody will figure out a perfect stat build and talents, and then it'll be perfect of a spec. But I was so surprised that I have to cast so many Shadow Balls and those shadow bolts are just ramp up just to get the soul shards. And then I gotta get the soul shards to send the demons out, and then I gotta get another wave of demons, and then more demons, and then empower those. It just felt so rampy. I didn't expect it. You know, it feels great in duels because you can have this crazy CC combo with stuns, horrors, and fears. But when it comes to battlegrounds, with so many people just being able to run away from you, or even getting kicked on Shadow Bolt, just feels terrible. But overall, it felt like a good spec. It felt a fun spec. It felt like a weird new spec, but it just didn't feel quite as good. Destruction, however, did pull the Warlocks kind of up by the bootstraps. Destruction felt like a lot of fun. Chaos Bolts are still a lot of fun to sling. In the lower tier, I would have to put Priests there. I did not really like the playstyle where your dots don't do a lot of damage. I just didn't feel that satisfying, man. It just didn't feel that good. I'm too used to Shadow Priest doing a lot of dot damage. Although the spec is great, and I think the CC alone is going to make the spec very much viable and strong. When it comes to arenas, just for me, I don't think it's one of the specs I'm super excited about playing in BFA off the bat, mainly on the top of damage alone. Although it's a good spec by CC, and I should know that CC is strong. I play a rogue. CC has always gone a long way for rogues. Also in the bottom tier, I had to put Ellie Shaman. I don't want to put Priest under the Ellie Shaman or Ellie under the Priest. I still think that both of those classes, even as Blizzard said, are going to be looked at in 8.1. I feel like there are some aspects that are unfinished. I feel like with the Elemental Shaman, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to more standardize the spec, but I kind of like the random nature that they had and all these fun little mechanics they had, like, you know, fun mini games they almost were playing in Legion, especially for PvP. And I love the mobility of an Ellie Shaman. I was completely okay with it not doing a lot of sustained damage, especially for PvP, where, you know, you only need to worry about burst. Sustained damage doesn't really matter as much for some of the classes, but as long as you can get some big bursts going and just wreck somebody, that's all you might need sometimes. Just stun him in an opener, get some crosses, you burst him down, that's it, you win the game. So they're moving that out of the Ellie Shaman, trying to make him more sustained based, trying to make him more reliable worth of damage. I just didn't really like. One of the things that really broke my heart was the Flame Shock cooldown on it. I thought that wouldn't be that bad of a deal. I actually miss it a lot. Just being able to Flame Shock every single pet and every single player and just rapid fire lava burst like there's no other. Anyway, this is my listing of all the casters for BFA right now. Currently, as a first impression for BFA PvP. This is first impression, so there's going to be a lot of changes coming in the pre-patches and whatnot. But if you're somebody who's wondering on the state of the game for casters, then there you go. I'll probably be doing a similar video in the near future on agility DPS as well as strength DPS, because I feel like it's a pretty good way to separate them. I could do every single melee, but I feel like there's just so many melee classes in the game. It's either to spread them out on agility as well as strength DPS. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I very much hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Which classes do you think are going to be fun? Which classes do you enjoy actually for BFA in terms of casters? Do you agree with my list? Or if you could, what kind of list would you make if you wanted to? Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, I'll see all of you in another video.